Hello, welcome to Who's Views. Welcome to The Sound of Whosic. Yes, it's another one of our episodes in our lovely series, The Sound of Whosic, where we celebrate everything from the soundtracks to the series, to the music, whatever you want to say. It's all here for you. And as you can see today, I'm joined by Paul. Hiya, Paul.
Hello there, how you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining me on this today, because today, Paul and I are here today to talk about this, because 2024, is the 45th anniversary of this Doctor Who, The Genesis of the Daleks on vinyl. Look at that. Isn't that a fantastic cover? And we thought we thought it was worth talking about, didn't we, Paul?
Oh, definitely. This is a moment as a fan for a certain age. This is a must-have as a fan. You have to have this, or have to have that at the time back in 79.
You absolutely did. And what this was all about, just for those of you that don't know, this was released as part of BBC Records back in 1979. And this, as Paul says, there was a big thing for Doctor Who fans. I remember, Paul, finding this. I mean, W.H. Smith back in the day was a mecca. It was a gold mine because it had everything. It was a proper shop. You could go into W.H. Smith and you had the magazines and you had all the newspapers, but you had a huge book department and you had a huge record department when back in the day. And that's where this one comes from. This comes from W.H. Smith back in 1979. And I remember seeing it on those old shelves, which are making a comeback in some shops now, where it was face out, and just going, because I'd been aware it was coming because it was publicized at the end of Destiny of the Daleks. Do you remember?
I remember that, yeah. It's funny you say about W.H. Smith. Our retail of choice was John Menzies. And we go there, and that's where they had the record department, a toy department. And I remember it being on after Destiny and maybe advertised as well, thinking that in Doctor Who Weekly as well, along with the TARDIS tuner at the same time.
That lovely comic strip they had as well.
Yeah,
I love that. I should have looked at that. Look it up. You have to look for that one because I should have put that on. But this was thrilling to have. I was 9 when this came out, and this was on. This is my original vinyl. It's probably worn out, Paul, because I listened to it every single night.
Well, that's the thing I did with mine. I don't have a vinyl anymore. I know it's sacrilege, but I played it to death as well, and there's lots of scratches on it. And but you could do it word for word. I have at the moment, obviously, I've got the season 12 box sets on there, but I have the CD version, which has Exploration Earth on it, and it's interesting. Just listening back to it recently, just to get a feel of it, and it was like Rocky Horror. I was doing the words to the to the story. I kept being prompted by it, and I would just go along with the dialogue. It's great, fantastic stuff.
It's funny that you say that it's probably got scratches and things on, because mine one does, and there's an element in the script that we'll all know where Davros is talking to the elite towards the end of the story, and he says a line that's along the lines of, "And they will dominate ruthlessly," and that's where my record jumps. So I get 2. It goes ruthlessly. So when I hear it now, or I watch the TV show back, and that's not there, it doesn't sound right to me.
Well, it's funny, yeah. It's kind of, you can't get enough of Michael Wisher's Davros, so to repeat the line's fine. But no, it's true. It's funny comparing the record to the TV version. I mean, Genesis is a show that's been repeated quite a lot. It's one of the most repeated classic Who stories, I would say. Certainly, I remember vaguely the original broadcast, but I remember more the repeats. I think there was a Christmas repeat, an hour-long version of the TV one, I think Christmas 75. And then it got repeated in Doctor the Monsters season as well in 82, then in the 90s, etc., etc. So it's a very familiar story. But like you say, when you listen to the record, then go back to the actual 6-parter, it's quite jarring. You can't because you think, oh, that bit's cut. Well, that jumps to there, and there should be a Dalek bit here, and all that kind of stuff. It's weird, isn't it?
It is actually weird, because for many years, of course, this was our actual pivotal remember, if you like, or entry point to Genesis of the Daleks, because at that point we only had the Target novel, and then this comes along. Yes, okay, there were occasional repeats, but you never knew when they were coming along, and sometimes you may have missed them because you were out playing, or you were doing other stuff with the family. I mean, a lot of us were kids at this point as well. But it is a shock. So when you're playing this one as much as we all did as kids, it was on my record player in my room every night to send me to sleep. You get used to this version of the story, and it is abridged, and it has to be abridged, obviously, because Genesis of the Daleks is a big story. It's 6 episodes. You can't get that onto the 2 sides of this record that they wanted. But you do get used to this version, don't you? And it's very shocking. Remember when it came out on VHS? And it was unedited, and it was presented for the first time as a complete story as it would have been broadcast. I was like, oh, okay, okay, because I was so used to the soundtrack version. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't remember this.
And that's the thing, that there's so much more footage, so much more of the story to it. But I think they really capture it in that hour of the record. It's great. It's a great, and Tom, I think. Tom was made to narrate stuff, wasn't he? He's fantastic on that. And they set it up as a complete story rather than being connected to Ark in Space and Sontaran Experiment. All that doesn't really connect to it, does it? Really, it's mainly about being on Skaro, arriving at the TARDIS, which is a bit strange, isn't it? But
yeah, I mean, you're right about Tom. I mean, Tom's just, I mean, you could give that man a shopping list and he would make it exciting and interesting and accessible, wouldn't it? I mean, it's just, just
it's funny you said, if you remember when Tom did the BT stuff that he did, and everybody got him to record something. I got him to record a part of Hartnell's speech from An Earthly Child, and it was great hearing Tom doing it. That's before all the did it at conventions and got all the other doctors to read speeches of other actors playing the Doctor. But he is fantastic in that, and his voice just sells the atmosphere of the story. Yeah, and it's brilliant. And an hour, it really encapsulates the story, makes it lovely and pacey. And an hour, and it's great stuff. And it's for us, this is pre VHS. We didn't have a recording of this at this point. This was our entry point, like you say, into Genesis, and this is how we know the story so well. Us fans of the same vintage, shall we say?
Oh yeah, and it was timed at exactly the right time, because it was coming out at the time that Destiny of the Daleks was hitting British television in September 1979. I remember this on the shelf, as I say. It was a Saturday afternoon after Destiny of the Daleks, so I think we must have been in City of Death territory right now. And as usual, I'd been dragged up to the shops. Actually, this one was from Chester, and we'd been dragged to Chester. Browns of Chester, all that sort of stuff. That was a huge shop, Paul, back in the day, where loads of women would congregate, as it seemed to me as a little boy, to buy shoes and handbags and hats, lovely coats. And I hated this. But, my mum would always say, but we'll go to the toy shop. We'll go to Toy and Hobby after this. You'd spend like what seemed to be hours and hours and hours in Browns of Chester, going up and down the store,
Up and down the escalators.
Right. Yeah, well, this one was so old it didn't have that many escalators, because it was one of the older ones, very Grace Brothers. But W.H. Smith was on the way to Toy and Hobby. And I remember my dad, who was probably just as peeved as I was at this point, would just pop into here and look at the records. And that's when I saw this. And that's when he said, yep, you can have this. Because my dad was very keen to make sure I had as much vinyl around me as possible.
And that made your day of the shopping. You thought fantastic.
It was worth
16 hours.
It was worth the agony. It was. I remember always being sitting on the what was it, the windowsill or something like that at the front of the shop, and having to sit there for hours. Well, I just want to pay homage to this a bit more, because this is the sleeve design is by Mario Moscardini, and the narrative and record realization is by Derek Goom. It was published by BBC Enterprises, as it was then, as I say, in 1979, and of course it was from the original telly play, the script by Terry Nation. And what they did, for anybody that hasn't heard this, and if you haven't heard this, where have you been? It's still available. Go and have a listen to it. Is, as Paul says there, they used Tom Baker to narrate certain elements to set the scene, because they have to take the chunks out. They have to take a lot of the story out of here. But even though they do that, thanks to Tom's narration and thanks to your imagination, you don't feel you've missed anything in the story. And that's quite clever, isn't it, Paul?
It is really clever. And I think what's interesting is, I wonder if they took the edit from the 60-minute version that was repeated in 75, because that's maybe what it's based on. I don't know, but it's very clever using Tom as narrator to fill the gaps. And this actually solidified my love of audio drama. I love radio plays and Doctor Who radio plays particularly, and I think this and the Pescatons really marked it for me as a fan for loving listening to Doctor Who. You know,
totally.
in the dark in your room, the lights off, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, magic that can only children can actually, it's not the same at our age now, is it? But only children can really live that experience, But yeah, I mean, you're right. But between the Pescatons that came before this and then this was our childhood, wasn't it? And it was just exciting to have an extra element to the Target, so it was an addition to the Target books, these things, and you're actually hearing it. And the brilliant thing that happens here is Tom is in character. This is the Doctor talking to you. It's as though he's actually reliving this adventure to you on your own in your darkened bedroom at the age that you are. Because the first words he ever says, I stepped from the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Oh, talk about setting the scene.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And then the Time Lord jumps in, and welcome, Doctor, and all that kind of fantastic stuff.
Yeah. And it's brilliant because what happens here is this is where the audio from the episode comes in, and then you start to realize what because at this point we are several years away from Genesis of the Daleks, so I've got vague memories of this. One thing I remember from Genesis of the Daleks to this very day is the grey and silver walls and the grey and silverness of the Daleks themselves.
Oh yeah,
and I was quite frightened as a kid of 5 years old watching this, back at the time. But you sort of get that sort of thrill from those moments when the Doctor and the Time Lord are talking and setting up the story.
It really sets up the jeopardy of the story because there's a lot at stake here. The Doctor's coming to avert the creation of the Daleks, and it's a massive threat to the universe, and it really feels this is a big story. This is a big moment for the Doctor, and then later on that when he says, "Do I have the right with the 2 wires and stuff?" There's a dilemma for him in this story, which is fantastic. But that picture you had just there, I've not seen that one before. Is that a kind of a fan one? It's very good, whatever it is.
Which one of the Daleks?
The one of all the Daleks. It's a great picture. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I think this is a recreation. I tried to find out who did this, but I couldn't. So apologies.
It looks fabulous. Whoever did it, so well
wonderful.
Done to them.
Yeah, and I thought, Paul, this actually captured the magic of this vinyl perfectly. Because as soon as you put this on, especially as a younger person, you can't help but look at this all the time, this cover, as you're looking at this, and you're reading the back of it as well all the time.
Oh, the back's fantastic. Just that lovely logo on the back with a black background. That really suits it really well. It's a lovely image of the diamond logo there. And it's iconic, isn't it?
Oh, totally. It really is. And it gave you thrills. I remember sitting in the back of the car going home, just looking at this all the time, thinking, "Whoa," reading it over and over and over again because it was just incredible.
You probably said to your mum and dad, "Drive faster. I want to play this when I get home." That was it.
Well, sort of. Yeah, you hurry up because you knew what was, and my parents at that point knew that this was going on as soon as we got home as well.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
This is a bit like the equivalent of kids nowadays watching Frozen back on and on and on and on kind of thing.
I suppose it is. I suppose it really is. Yeah. When something's downloadable now and the kids are all there ready for it, this was for us. It just happened to be that this is on vinyl. The wonderful thing about the vinyl as well is there's something magical about this. You're putting this lovely piece of plastic onto your record player. Then the music starts and you're getting those lovely old crinkly sounds, as I call it here, on some of them as well, all that sort of stuff. And then the music comes in and you've got Tom's I Step from the TARDIS and then you're off. It absolutely works, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. The atmosphere of the whole thing is amazing. And like I say, Tom's narration helps set that and make it really creepy and atmospheric. The thing that's interesting about it, I think, is the Daleks aren't in the original 6-parter that much. They're even less in this version. But when they're not there, you still feel their presence and the scares of the Daleks being there, the threat of them, and that helps with the atmosphere of it. And it really, I remember being completely enthralled by it when I was about 13 at the time, but it was still enthralling for me at that age and loving it, and not ever having had much chance to play Doctor Who again in your own house. I never recorded stuff off the telly like on audio until later on.
Yes.
But I having the records was great to have it your own. You could put it on when you wanted to. You have to wait for repeats, or you put it on when you want to hear it, much to the annoyance of your parents, obviously. But
yeah, well, every night, 7 days a week without fail. It was just absolutely brilliant. I mean, you're right about that as well. I mean, we keep saying about this as well. That when we were younger. Sometimes I miss those days where you didn't have everything as accessible and as immediate as it is today. You had to wait, and it sort of built up participation a little bit more. So when you got little presents coming along unexpectedly, because of course they didn't do the big brouhaha announcements that they do now. This is coming along, or this is coming along. You would, if you were very lucky, got an insert at the end of the show saying available from this week. You can buy this adventure on vinyl, and that would set you up, didn't it? It would get you so excited. So to actually see it,
all good record stores or something like that.
All good record stores, yeah. And there were lots of them in those days, and I always judged them by whether or not they were taking the Doctor Who records as a kid.
quite right, yeah.
So we're going through this story here, and it is just magical how it actually transfers beautifully onto a vinyl. And bearing in mind that this is the first time this has been done by BBC Enterprises, as they were then. I mean, it's very surprising because now we're very lucky in that we're getting vinyls quite a lot. But it was the first time this had been done with an actual story on the television. It's mind-boggling now to think that, isn't it? And it was very successful for them, apparently.
It was hugely successful, yeah. And the thing about it is why they didn't follow up with something else like Destiny or something, or because that was quite new. Why they didn't do that? It's really crazy. But again, the BBC are not renowned for jumping on the bandwagon when they need to.
Or the right bandwagons. Let's face
bandwagon,
it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean that I was ready for something else to come out when I'd finished this, and wearing the thing out. I was really, really, really ready for another one. I thought, and it never happened. I was quite disappointed on that. But back to Genesis of the Daleks here. We've got, as we're saying here, we've got the soundtrack here from the television series put through with Tom's narration. I think I love the fact that it just moves beautifully. And I think you're right. I think they must have got this from one of the edits.
Yeah.
One of the bank holiday specials or whatever, because it seems to be edited in a way that tells the story properly. And all Tom's narration does is highlights it. It really, really makes it keep going.
I love the bit where I think narration particularly, I think it's Davros's arrival when they do the test Dalek and they put the gun in for the first time, where you see it for the first time. He describes Davros and he describes the Davros's chair and stuff. And it's great image, and then having known Davros, obviously being a massive fan, you immediately see him from Tom's description. It's perfect.
Yeah. You're right there. I mean, especially as he'd just been on the television again at that point in 1979, which they're obviously trying to tie in with, which is actually in hindsight quite clever of them back then, because these things weren't done. That was never done. Whereas now you would take it for granted and you would expect something to tie in with something else. So you take advantage of a character coming back on television. You release their back catalogue or something to try and get extra business in. But back then it wasn't heard of. So these people were actually pioneers in a way when it came to the audios. It's down to Genesis of the Daleks that I think we are where we are today.
It's interesting though. It's taken till now to bring out the vinyl when vinyl kind of died out and they came back again. Why they couldn't have done it at the time, like I say, with Destiny or maybe some earlier stories, perhaps. I suppose they weren't very keen on doing out of time Doctors, were they? That wasn't a common thing to do. The current Doctor or nothing, really, wasn't it? So
I think it was, and we are coming to a point where the Doctor was about to change again and the lead actor was leaving and another one was coming in. Also, I reckon it must have been people at BBC Enterprises coming and going as well, because decision makers would have changed fairly constantly, I would have imagined, and stuff. But I think we were robbed, personally, our generation, of more of these.
I think we were, because they could have done all of Tom's back catalogue and we'd have all bought it.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Oh, can you imagine? That would have driven the parents completely insane. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we all know the story. Well, I hope we all know the story of Genesis of the Daleks right now. So it is all here, and it just plays absolutely fantastically. You were mentioning there the fact that on the TV version, it's called Genesis of the Daleks, but the Daleks aren't in it really until the very end. I think that actually builds up the atmosphere, not only of the TV episodes, but of this as well, because you can feel their presence. And it's interesting that some of the scenes with the Daleks are not actually fully in this vinyl, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, there's a moment that really always sticks out for me. Is I think it's when Davros lets them into the bunker. And I think he says, no, it's before that. Actually, it's the bit when I think he says, call all Dalek units. And there's a great bit of that coming in and shooting a Thal, then going off again. And that bit's not in it because you obviously can't see it. But in the series, it's fantastic. A fantastic moment. When that
Drama,
that's really, really jarring. But it's still, it's a lovely bit in the actual episode. But the Daleks, I agree with you, the Daleks are in it very sparsely, but what there is of them is fantastic. And that end cliffhanger at the end of the album itself, which ends on the Daleks, doing the mantra and doing the hysterical bit at the end, works so much better than the Doctor and Sarah
it does, doesn't it?
talking about there being a greater good from the Daleks, doesn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I understand why in the TV series you have to have that extra scene afterwards where the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry say goodbye to the Thals, Betten and the Thals, grabs hold of the time ring, and then that takes them into the next story. You have to have that on the television, but on the vinyl, the Dalek threatening the universe. That is such a powerful, and then it just goes into the theme tune.
That's it. With the theme of the Daleks' hysteria, works perfectly. Dramatically, it's fantastic. It really is.
It's fantastic. It really is. And do you know what? That was one of the things, Paul, because of course, as you move on, you forget certain things, don't you? And as JNT used to say, the memory can cheat a little bit, depending. But when I watched the VHS again, when that was finally released, that ending, part 6, shocked me because I couldn't remember that bit. I was like, have I seen this bit before? Because I'm so used again to how it finishes on the vinyl.
But that's it. I mean, when you do compare the two and contrast with them, it's amazing the differences. Like you say, there's an hour and a half missing. You know what I mean? It's quite a lot to it's a lot.
Do you miss that when you listen to it, or when you listen to it originally and when you listen to it now? Do you miss that content that's not there now?
I do a little bit, yeah. What is weird though, because it's a like you said, it's a different education to the story. This was my first real go at it, and it really cemented my knowledge of that story. Then when you watch it in the full episode version, which is a great story, one of my favorite Dalek stories, definitely, and probably a lot of fans. I actually hark back to knowing it on the record, because you can't get the memory back, can you? Really, once you watch the complete story. It's like never see. What I'd like to do as a fan really is to forget I'd seen all the stories and watch them again for the first time, or listen to them the first time. That'd be amazing. I envy Kirsty, who's one of our panel, that she's not seen all the classic stuff. To be able to go and watch, she's not seen the Three Doctors. To be able to watch that for the first time again would be amazing, Yeah. But you can't, So.
Yeah, you only get one go at it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's a shame, But like I say, we were lucky that we had that drip feed thing of getting things and having that surprise and anticipation, rather than having here's a download. I mean, I think the iPlayer thing is amazing. Don't get me wrong, and it's a great time for fans to be able to access it free on the BBC. Well, not free; you have to pay a TV license, obviously. But it's a great kind of moment for fans to be able to see that and have that access. But I much prefer the struggle as a fan in the 70s, 80s to get stuff, and you had to work for it. It was much more exciting.
Well, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And the fact that, the vinyl, the audio of this, it allows your imagination to run riot a little bit. Because yes, at this point, you've got images of what you watched back in the day. You can remember certain things. You certainly remember the look of Davros, because he was huge. And of course, since then, he's been in the Target book. He's been on covers. In 1979, the magazine had started. Doctor Who Weekly was arriving at this point. You were aware of whom Davros was. I mean, the Doctor Who Monster book was a great reference for a load of us. So you weren't going to forget that shriveled man with the really weird face, were you?
Well, the image on the cover of the vinyl is amazing. That's a great shot of him on it. Just that you can see the his bone structure and how sort of unwell he looks, which is an amazing illustration. What does get me a little bit the cover, which makes me laugh, and this is my OCD old fart fan coming out now, is the fact that the Daleks are all on the front cover, but we'll let that go.
Do you know what? From an artistic point of view, sometimes you have to do that.
You do, yeah.
You do have to do that because they are, of course, Daleks from Planet of the Daleks.
Of course, you noted as well, yes.
I think all of us as fans were going to know that, But you know what? I don't mind. They're still there, aren't they?
They're still Daleks. That's it. Yeah. So,
yeah. And it is difficult trying to find actually really good pictures of Daleks in poses you want. I've learned that over the last year.
Just that one, just what you had on earlier. That's what we should have had back in 1979, but we didn't get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just but when you're getting into this, even though as I'm saying, you know what Davros looks like, you know what a Dalek looks like, of course, you know what Sarah looks like. Even though at this point Sarah's gone, and so is Harry. It's wonderful to actually meet with them again on this wonderful vinyl back in 1979 and relive this story and to get involved with them again. But your imagination really gets into the story. So with the Doctor's help, and it is the Doctor, it's not Tom Baker, it's the Doctor that who's recounting this story for you. With his help, you're able to really get into this, and you're able to start building your own sort of world around it, because it's just so I can't explain it. It works so well on audio.
It does, and like you say, if you're not that familiar with it, so obviously at that point I'd not seen it for a few years,
yes,
and there wasn't any repeats of it round about that time, so you kind of, like you said, when it's on audio, your imagination fills in some of the gaps. So some of the things you're imagining aren't what they perhaps are like in the story when you see it later on. So your imagination works overtime, which adds to the atmosphere and to the engagement of the story, don't you think?
Oh, totally. And what as I said, I was trying to allude to there as well. It was absolutely wonderful to be reunited with these three. Because as I keep saying, we didn't have videos at this point. Both Sarah and Harry had left the series here. It was wonderful to actually hear them again and to relive this story with them. I was thrilled to have my Sarah Jane back, and that's probably one of the reasons as well, because I knew this cast and loved this cast so much that I listened to this every single night as a boy.
Well, I was much the same, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but the Pescatron's got Sarah in it as well. So that having that connection of the two together, you're obviously very familiar with Sarah because she was a big part of Doctor Who.
Yeah, we grew up there. Yeah,
with exactly. So from Pertwee and Tom, etc. And I've always loved Harry anyway. So I'm a big fan of Harry, and having him back was great. And Ian Marta should get more love, I think, definitely.
Oh, totally, you should, yeah. I mean, one of the things about, you mentioned Harry on this as well, he's not really in it much, but yeah, I don't get that because I know he's there, so even though you're not hearing him much, again, because the audio works so well, you are placing him in the situations. So there's that whole situation at the beginning, of course, where the Doctor and Harry are taken prisoner. And it's mainly the Doctor talking there against, what's his name? Ravon. That's it. Guy Sinner's character.
Yeah.
Raven, isn't it? It's Raven, sorry.
Raven, yeah, Raven.
And so what we've got there, but Harry's there.
There's a great line. There's a great line when I think when Nyder comes in and he says aliens. They said, and it said humans, and Harry said, "Well, I am anyway."
Yeah. Did you actually remember the look that the Doctor gives Harry at that point? Because I did. I remember hearing this for the first time and just remember, oh yeah, that's where the Doctor goes.
Yeah. Well, the look scream. There's also later on that same bit, I think it is, just the Doctor says, "What, no tea?" and it's lovely, it's a fantastic moment. Because this is really deadly serious, Tom does some lovely moments of kind of just puncturing the tension a bit with these little light gags, and they're done very subtly, and not like later when he becomes comedic Tom, which I still love anyway. But in Genesis, he just helps with the tension. It's quite dramatic, but the comedy little moments he has, like "What, no tea?" is absolutely fantastic stuff.
Well, it's very British, isn't it? You're being threatened with violence and aggression and death, and all you want is a cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, that's very doctorous, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, totally. It brings out that wonderful element of what used to be the BBC, and how they got the fact that this show and this character is as quintessentially as British as a cup of tea in itself, But it works so well on audio, and it does bring that little smile to your face.
Well, it does. And Tom, I think Tom hit his stride from episode 1 of Robot and Never Look Back. But he's really comfortable in this story, particularly, and you really it's funny because I don't remember comparing him at the time to the 79 Fourth Doctor, to the Genesis Doctor, you know what I mean? But there's a very great difference to the performance, like we're saying, about him being more comedic. But I think when he plays it really straight, he's got so much gravitas generally anyway. But when he plays it straight, it works so well, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's a brilliant point, actually, because we had just come off the back of Destiny of the Daleks when this thing got into our hands. But no, there was no comparison. You're absolutely right. As a 9-year-old me listening to this for the first time of many, didn't even equate the performance from Tom then to the one I'd just seen or was watching into season 17 at that point. Yeah, that's a very interesting point there, because it's just still the Doctor.
Oh, he's still the Doctor, yeah.
This is the Doctor we'd grown up with. So that's actually quite an interesting take on this, to be able to say, well, why didn't we compare the performances? Well, maybe it's just because that's not what we did then. I don't know.
No, it's exactly. I don't think I certainly wasn't of that age, even at 13, aware of critical analysis of the series as we kind of do now. You know what I mean? Looking back as an adult, you can see the differences very prominently, and it's all about different showrunners and all that kind of stuff. It was Hinchcliffe rather than Williams, etc. But he's very much still the Doctor either way, isn't he?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And actually, if anything, this actually helps to remind you of earlier Tom Baker. And that was the important thing of this as well, because yes, we were growing up with this guy. We're now in the 1979 season 17. We've just come off, as I keep saying, off the back of Destiny of the Daleks. So to go back and listen to Genesis of the Daleks, what a treat and what a gift from BBC Enterprises to be able to say, right, okay, look, we're going to bring this out on a soundtrack record. I mean, it was a special time.
It was. It's funny. There are certain artifacts of Doctor Who merchandise growing up in the 70s, like the Radio Times special 10th anniversary, the making of Doctor Who, the Monster Book, and this is one of them. The Genesis of the Daleks LP. This is one that you had to have as a fan, or you want a proper fan.
Well, I think everybody had it, no matter what age.
Yeah, exactly.
Within there, there used to be a lad I knew who was about 4 or 5 years older than me, so he was an old boy from a 9-year-old's point of view. He was older, one of the old boys, and he had it, and he was just as enthusiastic as we still are today. And I hope he's happy, and I hope he's still as enthusiastic about it, because he got it shortly after I did. And I remember a very happy, what seemed like hours, discussion about this and our favorite bits of this, just like you and I are doing now. But it showed you, didn't it? I mean, there would have been adult fans that have gone out and bought this and added it to their vinyl collections as well.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, you can see that now with some of the releases, and you go in and buy the albums. I got the Amazing World one for a friend of mine recently.
Yes,
and
lovely.
The queue of most of the people in the queue weren't vinyl fans, or were Doctor Who vinyl fans, you know what I mean? They weren't just music fans, and you could tell all the Doctor Who fans. They weren't dressed with scarves and stuff, all that kind of stuff. They were actually just, you could tell you chatted to them in the queue, because you had to wait for like 3 hours to get a copy of some Amazing World. And I was chatting to people. Some were musical people, some were Doctor Who fans. So lovely seeing that interest come back,
Oh, it is. It's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. And the fact that, the likes of Demon Records, for example, and to an extent Silver Screen as well with the soundtracks, are really meeting that demand that we've got now. It's lovely to see this back. But every time I see a new vinyl coming through, I do think of Genesis of the Daleks. And to an extent as well, the Pescatons, because they're the ones that really started all this. And it's just lovely to see that it's continuing now. 2023 into 2024, and that's one of the reasons, everybody, that we're actually celebrating this. This is issued, as I say, in 1979, so that means that 2024 is a big anniversary. It's the 45th anniversary of this record, and that really makes me feel.
Thank you for reminding me of that date. Yes.
I mean, I mean, it's amazing though that it's still as relevant now as it was back in 79.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I think probably. I mean, the fact that we're still fans now is probably a testament of that record. I think probably it helped brainwash you into being a fan. Not that using much brainwashing. You know what I mean? But when you played it and you got so engrossed in it, and like I said earlier at the start, when I re-listened to it, I was doing the words. I knew the words. I could do the dialogue. We could probably act out a scene now if you wanted to, but but it's, you know, it's that kind of thing. It's you knew it so well, and that was lovely. That familiarity I really like as a fan, because you feel a bit of ownership for it. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think that's certainly what is still around today, from our generation, especially, to be able to say, look, this album was absolutely pivotal in creating our fandom. You know, it really was, because it's hard for people today when they look at things like, you've got the TV episodes, you've got the DVDs, you've got the Blu-rays, you've now got all the streaming coming onto that as well. You've got countless books, you've got the magazines, you've got countless comic strips now. I mean, they are really spoiled today. All we had was the TV series, which was on 24, 26 weeks a year, 25 minutes a week, if you were lucky. And then the Target books, and then this final. And then
we are on the cusp, like you said, of the Doctor Who Weekly starting as well.
Yes,
so that was another addition to our lovely things we could go and buy for 12 pence.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, that's all we had. So no wonder we kept playing these things to death when they arrived, you know, and reading things constantly, because that's all we had. And we were literally, you know, begging for content. We didn't know it at the time because we were all kids, but we were looking for more and more and more and more. You know,
let me mention on the Target show we did a while ago, which you can pick up viewers if you want to, and look in our back catalogue. But the Target books, especially Genesis as well, was one I read to death. So I knew the story very well from Terence and from the record. So, and then it was later when I got more into the actual episodes themselves. But it's kind of having all those little bits just was like a jigsaw puzzle, wasn't it, to being a fan a little bit?
Totally. Absolutely. And without these things, goodness knows what would have happened, because these kept us going, didn't they? So in the months that Doctor Who isn't on air, you had your Target book and you had these vinyls now. And that's the other reason these things were played. And also why they created a little bit. I mean, I kept saying to my dad, you know, is there going to be another one? Do you think there's going to be another one? And of course he couldn't answer me. He didn't know. He wasn't particularly interested either.
And how many times, JT, did you ask your dad that question? Do tell.
Thousands. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do remember the Saturday, every Saturday after involved a trip to WH Smith in case there had been another one brought out. You know,
we did the same thing, didn't we, with the Target books? You'd see you go into John Menzies or WH Smith, you see the different spine or whatever, and that's a new one.
Yes,
you know, go by it, you know, which is lovely. Yeah. So.
And it was brilliant, your Saturday afternoon trips, because once you got through all the boring adult stuff and you were allowed to go to the toy shop, or in my case as well, the bookshop and the record shop. At this young age, wouldn't you? You would go straight to the books to see what the latest Target was that was on the shelf, and then you would, because they were huge sellers. For people that don't know, they were huge sellers, so everybody was stocking them. All the bookshops had them, and then you would go to the records department, and I was always gutted to find it was always going to be this and Doctor Who sound effects on there. You know, and the Pescatons for a little while as well. You know, there was never an addition. There was never a fourth one coming out.
Can you remember off the top of your head when the sound effects LP came out? It was pre Genesis, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was. And I remember getting that for either my birthday or Christmas. I actually think it was Christmas, and being thrilled with that. And that was something else that was always played. But to get an actual story coming out, you know, and I just want to talk about, obviously. Let's talk about the Daleks on this as well. Again, on this record, they're in it less than they are in the TV episode, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And when they are, when they're not speaking, they're represented by that gorgeous soundtrack. And this proves a lot of things. I'm actually saying that the music from the original era of Doctor Who is so powerful in places. You know, not every story, obviously, but this definitely is one of those examples where this would be good, isolated, played in a concert, put out somewhere. You know, it's just, it's so menacing. And do you remember the thrill when you're a youngster, when you put this on at night in your bedroom, the lights are all off, and you're trying to get to sleep, and you can't actually because you're terrified because you know the Daleks are coming.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Dudley's music is superb as always. There's no denying that he was a great composer. Yeah, that section where they turn on Davros. Or before that, when they opened the doors and the Daleks are in the doorway and the piece of music being played for that, you know, or
those symbols.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And then they turn on Davros, and it's just so scary, isn't it?
Well, it is, and do you know what? It's that music actually that I remember absolutely vividly. It was building up, and I remember the images in my head when I know I'm remembering how it looked as a little boy on the television. And the music helped that. The music brought those memories back of actually as a little boy of 5 years old being absolutely terrified that these Daleks were in every door and these people were trapped. And it's the music that brought all that back. I could picture it vividly the first time I listened to this. I was
Well, the bit that's
actually very
on the
scared.
record, which is the bit that's on the record, which is still in the TV show, obviously, or vice versa, is the bit where Davros invites the Dalek in for the first introduction to the Khaled, to the Dalek properly.
Oh yeah,
When they turn on the Doctor and indicate he's an alien, etc. That bit there, when the music plays, the Dalek comes in, that is another scary moment. And then they arm the Dalek, which is even scarier. And it just the atmosphere of that is just, and then they turn on the Doctor, which is, oh my God, what's going to happen to him? He's going to get killed. It's an amazing moment, you know, and just that symbolic bit when they put the gun in, and I mean, Peter Miles as Nyder is amazing in this story. Such a great double act between him and Michael Wisher, just fantastic stuff.
But actually, that's worth mentioning because that does come across on the vinyl as well. Because even though their parts have been very heavily edited to get them into the time allocated to the record, it does come through. You've got the big chief here, the big villain, and his big henchman. You know, and the sinister element of their relationship makes it to the vinyl. It shows how good this thing was actually put together, doesn't it?
It's great. There's a bit that really is really creepy. Is when they go to the Thals and they give the Thals a formula to bomb the Khalids, and they're Davros and Nyder are really, really sweet and nice to them, and you can tell in the tone, even with them trying to be nice to them, they're so evil. It's fantastic stuff, particularly when Peter Miles is explaining what's going to happen. He's got an evil smile on his face. You can see it on the audio. You can, honestly, it's amazing.
Well, it's a good point actually, because that scene, again, speaking from my 9-year-old point of view, I remember thinking, why are they listening to him? Because I couldn't remember this scene from the original television version, possibly because it's a little bit, for a kid, it's a bit boring, so you may blank it out, because all you want is zap, zap, zap at that age, isn't it?
More Daleks, please.
Yeah. So I don't remember this scene at all. So to hear it as my 9-year-old self, I'm thinking, this is different. I don't remember this. But you can hear in when you're hearing the way that the actors are playing it, it's deliciously malevolent. It's practically dripping with evil lines, because they know they're putting these Thals into the trap, and they know the Thals are coming into the trap. But without the pictures, you can hear it played in the actors' voices. And I just thought that was incredible. I don't know what talent.
Well, they're fantastic actors anyway. Michael Wisher and Peter Miles together work brilliantly as a double act, like I said. And I think both have got great voices. Both Peter Miles as kind of Nazi that he is, and Davros as well. And I think Michael Wisher particularly, what a gift for audio as well. His Davros voice is fantastic, you know, and it just, and when he gets to the points, I can't remember this, is this on the record or not? I can't remember now off the top of my head. When they do the interrogation, he gets hysterical. You know, the bit when they're both strapped to the kind of
it is. It is there. I mean, it's edited again, but it's there because that bit where he's getting the Doctor gives him the idea of, you know, could you do it?
Yeah.
That's when you actually. Well, I got frightened at that point as well, because of the performance and the delivery of that line and how maniacal that voice is. It really plays out on this record so well.
Well, that you know, the confrontation between the two about the hypothetical virus bit is really well played, and it's often been said that when Tom gets a really strong antagonist, a villain, he really plays against that really well, and I think he does beautifully with it. Him and Michael Wisher have a great hero-villain dynamic, which works really, really well, and both the actors sell that kind of tension and that kind of feeling of scares and atmosphere, don't you think?
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm been bearing in mind that this is Tom's very early days as well. This is his first year, isn't it? And it doesn't feel like he's finding the Doctor. He's found the Doctor, as you mentioned earlier, from Robot onwards. He knows what he's doing. But when you're right, when you get somebody like Davros in front of him, he takes it so serious. He understands the threat that this man, Davros, is putting out there, is presenting. And what Tom does is he plays that backwards, because he's also got, this comes out in the audio as well, actually. The Doctor is aware of how dangerous Davros is because he's a little bit insane. Let's face it. At this point in his life,
just a wee bit, yeah.
It gets worse. Let's face it. As he moves on, in fact, it gets completely and utterly worse. But here, it's settled in, and it's sort of coming out a little bit now. And he's absolutely obsessed with his plan to get the Daleks out there, and then he's obsessed with the plan that the Daleks will become the supreme beings of the universe. And that obsession has taken over absolutely everything of Davros's life. So the Doctor understands this, and he's wary of this, but he's also there on a mission. And this man, Davros, holds the key to that mission. It's Davros that has to be stopped here. Nobody else really matters. And I love the fact that through this audio as well, that really comes out through the Doctor's reaction and conversation with Davros. And I don't know, I'm going to say as well, that actually helped me to hear this more on the video when it eventually arrived.
I know what you mean. It really kind of magnifies it, because I think when you're listening to an audio or a radio, you have to concentrate more, I think, because there's no picture. So you're really listening to it. And I think that does help sell it, because you're having to really focus on it. What's interesting, because Davros is really arrogant, obviously, when the Daleks turn him at the end, he's almost quite surprised by that. It's very funny, because he's shocked, and they ask for pity, and he doesn't get it. That moment's is actually quite tragic, and tragically played by Michael Wisher. But he's actually he seems quite surprised, a bit in the same way I think Mavic Chen does in Dalek Master Plan a little bit. You know what I mean? So,
well, you're absolutely right. It's the thing with the audio here. Myself now, the age I'm at now, says this shouldn't work, but it absolutely does, because there are certain scenes that there's no instrumental, there's no sound effect. It's quiet for vinyl. It's quiet for audio, because it's just two men playing. They're playing against each other. They're having a conversation, and it's amazing that in the days here where radio dramas were still hugely popular and incredibly powerful, and lots and lots of people, millions of people around the UK were tuning in still to radio to listen to audio drama and comedies. But, this was lifted from the television and put onto a vinyl. I believe it has also been played on radio since in the intervening years. So I hear. I wasn't aware of that. A mate of mine told me about that yesterday. He said, I'm sure I heard that on the radio as part of something. It wouldn't surprise me. But the fact that that drama is played so well, works so well on audio, is a real testament to the script, to the direction, and of course to the performers, because it shouldn't work, but it does, because there's no visual.
Well, I think the thing about it is, I think partly that for me is the fact that it's played with complete conviction.
Yes,
all the actors in it play really deadly straight. It's a very straight. It's quite a dour story, Genesis, but I like dour Doctor Who. It suits me very much. But I like it when it's deadly serious. I like it when it's funny as well. But Genesis works because it is.
It's a proper drama.
It's proper drama. Yeah, it's really straight, and I think that all the actors sell it. Particularly, the guy who plays Ronson, I think, superb. The Irish actor, I've forgotten his name now. But he's really strong in it.
James Garbett. Looking at my notes here, James Garbett,
a great Irish actor, fantastic actor,
I mean, it is just. I have to. As a little boy, I kept getting Ronson's voice mixed up with Tom's occasionally in these scenes from the show.
Oh yeah, I did as well. When they're having a conversation about "tell me where you're from" and blah blah blah, all that stuff about. And then Tom goes into that lovely spiel about time and space, etc. It's great. And I know what you mean. I remember having a thing. Thinking who's speaking now a little bit, because they just sound a wee bit similar, I must admit.
They do actually, and it is quite weird. But as a boy, and I had to really work at it. But that actually was great, because that was developing my listening skills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cause I have to say that both this and the Pescatons created my love of audio and my awareness of audio, my this created the need in me, if you like. I wanted more. I wanted more Doctor Who on audio. It took years, really, to get that sort of through.
It did. I mean, I know we got some by a kind of fait accompli where the show was cancelled, like Slip Back, and then we got in the early 90s, we got Paradise of Death and Ghost of Endspace, and then we had.
But that was years after this, wasn't it? I mean, I was old by then.
I'm really surprised. I was old by then as well. It really surprises me that they didn't do it sooner. It really does, because it's such a no-brainer. And then Big Finish picked it up, and they've been running for like 20 odd years. So it's just crazy, And
considering that it was a good seller for them as well. It's a mystery to me, as we were talking about at the top of the show, as to why they didn't continue. But I'm very, very grateful to this, because it was that I started as in my late teens. I just started discovering drama on the radio as well. That was always going to be important. Some of those dramas got me through my university revisions. And it always got back to me to remembering Genesis of the Daleks and how important a role that actually played. And I must have played. I mean, it did. We know Doctor Who fans for this. This was a pivotal part of our life. I mean, it's so important. We can't tell a new generation how important this record was to us, can we?
No, you can't, because it's a completely different time, And I think, like I said earlier, I like that idea of having to struggle to get media. Later on when we get VHS, and we all had friends who could swap tapes with them, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But to actually have to work for it, I felt more gratitude from that, rather than getting all at once. I mean, if I was a fan now, I would have exploded, because there's so much going on. I mean, it's if I was growing up as a young fan, I mean, I'm still a fan of the series, obviously, but if you had all that at once, you just peak too soon and explode, I'd imagine. But
I do hope that younger fans are discovering these lovely audios that we're talking about as part of the sound of Whosic, because they are so important, and I think they're great for any young kid to get into, to listen to as well, because times haven't changed that much. I still think that a kid today would listen to this, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, whatever, 9 years old, would still listen to this and be able to conjure up, because some of them may not have seen Genesis of the Daleks the same way we did. They may have seen it once through a DVD or a download or the iPlayer or whatever, and then they move on. And I just hope that they're discovering this and then putting their own take on this in their head, and imagining all the sort of the millions of Daleks that are actually suggested through the story. Seeing the Doctor running around being a little bit frantic, Davros, Sarah and Harry. Oh, I hope they're still discovering this.
I think there's often with young fans getting into classic Who, is that they think the pacing's a bit slow, and I think obviously that's a thing you have to get used to. But in terms of accessibility, ability to colorizing the Daleks and shortening it down, blah blah blah, that's a way to maybe involve newer fans. This is a good introduction to a story that's got great pacing, because it's in an hour. It's an hour-long show, and it goes like a train. It goes really fast. The hour just goes like that. So I think it's a great introduction to new fans to access older Doctor Who, to get them in the mood for it, and then that's a good taster of it, and then they can see, then they can jump into the iPlayer and watch anything they like.
Yeah, and because of course it's on audio as well, they can download it to whatever device they're using and take it with them on the go. Because some of them seem to be doing whatever. I mean, I've got friends that've got kids that say they don't necessarily sit down that much now in front of the television. So this is on audio. You can take it with you. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Maybe that's why we're getting much more audio coming out now as well, because it can be portable.
I mean, certainly when all the missing soundtracks came out, like Marco Polo, etc., I listened to them on my iPod and on the train commuting and stuff like that. It was great stuff,
Well, that was the brilliant thing about Genesis of the Daleks, wasn't it? Because that actually set the scene for those episodes that came through on those years later when the BBC started releasing them. You knew what, from our point of view then, because we'd grown up with this, we knew what we were getting into. We knew what was going to happen. We knew the sort of element. I don't think they had the magic of Genesis of the Daleks, because then things have moved on. We were all older. They were looking at presenting it slightly differently. But this one is always going to be special, isn't it? This Genesis of the Daleks, for all of us of a certain age, this is there. It's just brilliant.
It's one of those memories that you look back on nostalgically and think, what a great time to be a fan. And that was a great pivotal moment, seminal moment for being a fan, like buying the Radio Times special, like I said, or the Monster book, or getting into Doctor Who Weekly. But this was one of those moments which I adored as a fan. And like I said, I know the words backwards. I've been listening to it so many times. So.
This must be the Doctor Who script for an entire generation or two that we know off by heart, because it was just given to us in so many formats, in so many ways. But certainly because of this record, it's, oh goodness me, it's nice to see as well that it's been around for quite a while now. So you showed up the cassette version, didn't you?
No,
you've got that.
I've got the cassette version behind me as well. But yes, so I've got like every good Doctor Who fan, GT, I bought it several times.
Look at that, viewers.
That the cassette version. I've not bought the cassette. I had the record.
You got two.
You got two. Wow.
I look at these things now and I just think, oh my Lord, look at them. They're so small. Look at these things.
I know, yeah. Well, if you go back to the moments when it got tangled up and you had to get the pen and wind up and all that kind of stuff.
They used to wind us up, didn't they? But yeah, we've had it on several formats since the original one. Yeah, we've shown them there. You had it on this as part of the BBC Radio collection. Again, it was a great hit for them. The CD version came there. It's been out a couple of other times, I believe. It was on download. And then in 2023, it appeared on this beautiful piece of work here. And I couldn't get over it. Here it is again, Doctor Who, Genesis of the Daleks. And this is a set that has come out from Demon Records. And in this is Genesis of the Daleks, the Pescatons, Exploration Earth, Tom Baker in his own words, and Doctor Who State of Decay. And we'll get around, to look at State of Decay eventually as well. But it's all on there. And I'm just, when I saw this coming out and the fact that Genesis of the Daleks is there, I thought there is still life in this thing.
It's a lovely set that you have there, really nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that Genesis is still there all these years later, 45 years later. And that's the brilliant thing about it, isn't it? It still can be reissued and found.
You don't need to play it, but sadly, I bet most of the people who buy the vinyl, it'll still be sealed and they won't listen to it, which is such a shame.
I think there might be ways to do that. Now, if they find the vinyl and it's still sealed, I'm sure you must be able to get it now on other means. That would be brilliant, wouldn't it? So you can get that.
There's better be a QR code you can download it from somewhere. Or something.
Yeah, tying the old with the new like that. It's quite magical in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you about Genesis of the Daleks, the vinyl. 45 years of this absolute gem, this classic record that is so important to us as an entire generation. And I'm sure, hopefully, new generations of Doctor Who fans are finding this as well. I do hope so. Just to round off, Paul, what's your favourite part of the album?
My favourite part of the album? No, that's a good point. I particularly like the cover. And the back cover is probably one of my favourite bits, the actual physical piece. And that lovely logo on the back with the black background is really, really nice.
I'll just show that again.
Yeah, that is absolutely gorgeous. And that logo can do no wrong for me. I'm glad they brought it back. But do you know a particular moment of the story itself?
What gave you a thrill when you were listening to it all those years ago?
I think probably, as we said earlier, the fact, the cliffhanger of the entire story with the Daleks ranting and then the sting comes in, that is probably my most favourite moment. Because it's got a great atmosphere and a great cliffhanger. We're all doomed because the Daleks are coming back to get us. That's the best. So, yeah.
I love that.
What about yourself? What was your favourite bit of it?
I would tend to agree with you in that the ending to the vinyl that you've just illustrated there is absolutely brilliant. It's also terrifying. It really is. When you were listening to that as a kid, it's terrifying because it's all in your head and it's all kicking off a little bit more. But I do have a particular fondness as well for that whole element between the Doctor and Davros talking about, that idea he puts into Davros's head, which Davros seems to take into his head and keeps there forever. I love those performances as well. As I say, it shouldn't work on vinyl, but on audio, but it really does. It's just magical. I love that bit.
And I do think why it works so well, like we said already, is Tom's narration is superb on that. And like you said, Tom could read the telephone directory, and I'd buy that on CD or record, no problem at all.
It's just magical. It's absolutely brilliant. It helps to bring the whole thing to life in a different medium, one that actually shut the world for all of us. And as I say, it was the introduction to many of us to the world of audio and what audio drama and all the various elements that were available on audio. I'm so grateful. And it's great to share some memories. I hope you've enjoyed Paul and myself having a walk down memory lane here and celebrating 45 years of Genesis of the Daleks on vinyl. Please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and have a look at some of the other stories that we've talked about here on The Sound of Whosic on Who's Views on our playlist. Lots more to come as well. This Doctor Who has given us so much over the last 60 years. It really has, and we hope to be really rummaging through it all to see what we can talk about. So listen, Paul, thank you so much for joining me. As ever, fantastic to see you. Really, really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And a nice trip down memory lane. Fantastic stuff.
Absolutely. It really is. More to come as well. So until we see you again with more trips down memory lane, have a good time. Take care. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.